I have been at New Hope since July of 1995, which is 2 months before the church actually launched, and haven't gone anywhere since. What I noticed first about New Hope in its early stages was just the sense of family, the sense of ohana, that everyone had a role and everyone had a part to play in making the church effective. I have been everything from the janitor to the facility director. Most of my roles were in operations, overseeing the Levites, overseeing the facility. Currently, I'm again shepherding the people who make the operations of New Hope happen. I've been a licensed pastor with Foursquare since 2007, and while that's a card and a certificate that gives me authority to do the work of ministry, I believe pastoring is less of a title and more of an action, and shepherding and pastoring are pretty much the same thing. So shepherding is not always the most glamorous of work. You have to kind of get down and dirty and work with people at their best and at their worst. I grew up in an irreligious family. We weren't of great faith. My dad was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, and my mom was not really tied into a church. When I was 9 years old, my dad left. My dad kind of decided to beat his own path and left us. It wasn't until quite a few years later that we began to start a relationship again. And for the years that he was away, I had some resentment. I thought it was my fault that he left, not knowing the whole dynamics of affairs. And when Dad came back to the house, he came back to care for my grandfather, who eventually passed away. And we developed a relationship again. Around 2015, my dad began to show signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, and it was not getting any better. And so for the last 2 years of his life, I'd taken on a role where I was trusted by my dad, despite the fact that he was not always sure who I am. And I had done the best I could with what I had to caregive. And through his condition deteriorating, his hospitalization, through the care homes, and ultimately through my being at his side at his last breaths, it was a memorable moment where I could actually take on the role, almost parenting my dad and escorting him and encouraging him all the way to the point where I could forgive him, for what had happened, and being able to walk with him right to the point where he breathed his last. And I told him, "Dad, you gotta trust Jesus. You gotta trust Jesus." And that was the last thing he probably heard from me. My mother-in-law passed away 2 weeks before my dad did. It is, without a doubt, the most difficult year of my life thus far, 2017. Having lost both my mom-in-law and my dad in such a short period of time. We didn't even bury my mother-in-law, and my dad passes. The most important thing was, in each crisis, hearing God ask me 4 simple words: "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" And with my being honest and saying, "God, I want to, but right now I don't." And overcoming that by saying, no matter how hard life is, God, you are still good. I remember when I was asked to move my family over to Molokai and to become the director and chaplain of this retreat center that was still in formation. And I remember asking Pastor Wayne for some sage advice, and I told him, can you give me a word and something that I can kind of take with me? And his words were, "Be faithful." And when I asked him, "Be faithful in what?" he just smiled and said, "Be faithful." And I was like, I need a little more than that. But having gone through this, entire journey of 20 plus years at New Hope, being faithful is simply that. Being faithful in everything, in my family, in my private time, in my ministry, and in my work, both work ethic and work leadership. It's so important to be faithful, as though Jesus were right there watching everything that we're doing.